The lights weren't always bright, and the applause wasn't always guaranteed. Before the red carpets, the fan chants, and the breathtaking performances that define them as global icons, Xiao Zhan and Wang Yibo were just two young men standing at the edge of their dreams. Unsure, unpolished, but unbreakably determined. Their rise to fame might look effortless now, but their beginnings were carved out of nights filled with doubt, struggle, and a quiet kind of fire that only those destined for greatness carry within. It began in different corners of China. Two souls with very different stories but one shared destiny. Xiao Zhan was the quiet artist, the dreamer who sketched emotions into paper before he ever stood before a camera. He had a smile that could calm a storm, but behind it was a young man torn between practicality and passion. Wang Yibo, on the other hand, was the rebel of rhythm, a dancer who spoke best when his body moved, a boy whose world spun on two wheels and the heartbeat of music. Before fame touched his life, Xiao Zhan was just a college student at the Chongqing Technology and Business University, majoring in design. His world was filled with colors, lines, and digital canvases. He wasn't chasing stardom then. He was crafting it unknowingly through every piece of art he made. His friends often said he had a calm aura, like someone who carried music inside but hadn't yet learned to sing it aloud. One winter evening, Xiao Zhan sat in a small cafe with his sketchbook, watching the snow fall beyond the glass. His best friend nudged him, half joking. "You should audition for something, Zhan. You've got the face, the voice, and that quiet mystery." Xiao Zhan laughed, shaking his head. "I'm not built for the spotlight," he said. But life had a way of proving him wrong. Months later, an opportunity came. A talent show, X-Fire, was looking for participants. It wasn't fame he sought. It was a whisper of curiosity that made him apply. On stage for the first time, his hands trembled. His voice, unsure at first, found power in vulnerability. Every note he sang came from somewhere real. The judges saw potential. The audience saw something magnetic. Xiao Zhan saw his future shift. He didn't win that competition, but he didn't need to. What he gained was far more valuable, a glimpse of his destiny and a new world that was calling his name. That experience led him to join the boy group X9, where he trained tirelessly, danced until his muscles burned, and sang until his voice cracked. But through every exhaustion-filled night he smiled, because he was doing something he loved, and for the first time the quiet artist was learning how to shine. Wang Yibo's story began in Luoyang, Hunan. Unlike Xiao Zhan's calm beginnings, Yibo's world was loud, fast, and full of motion. He was a boy who refused to stand still, obsessed with dance and motorcycles. He was the kind of kid who'd fall, bleed, and get up laughing. His energy was magnetic, his confidence sharp as lightning. At age 13, he shocked his parents when he told them, "I'm going to be a performer." They didn't understand at first. "You're too young," his father said. But Yibo wasn't asking for permission. He was making a promise. He trained relentlessly, often dancing until his knees bruised, watching videos of international crews and mimicking their every move until his body spoke the language of rhythm fluently. At just 16, he became a trainee under Yuehua Entertainment and soon debuted as a member of the South Korean Chinese boy group UNIQ. It was a whirlwind, new country, new culture, new pressures. Many young artists would have crumbled under that weight, but Yibo turned it into fuel. He woke up earlier than others, stayed longer in the practice rooms, and pushed himself until exhaustion blurred his vision. "You can't be great if you're comfortable," he once said in an interview, eyes fierce with conviction. But beneath the confidence was a boy who sometimes felt lost. The nights in Seoul were long and lonely, and the homesickness hit harder than expected. There were days when he'd sit by the window, headphones in, watching the city lights flicker below. "One day," he whispered to himself, "they'll know my name." Years later, fate did what it always does. It intertwined two stories meant to collide. In 2018, Xiao Zhan and Wang Yibo were cast together in the historical drama The Untamed. At first, no one could have predicted the phenomenon it would become. They were both rising stars, known but not yet legends. The project was risky, the characters complex, the story unconventional. Yet, when they met for the first table read, something clicked. The air was charged with quiet tension. Xiao Zhan, ever composed, smiled politely. Yibo, younger and more reserved, nodded curtly. But as they rehearsed, something extraordinary began to unfold. Their chemistry, unspoken, effortless, lit up every scene. Xiao Zhan's emotional depth balanced Yibo's fierce subtlety. They didn't just act. They communicated through glances, pauses, and unsaid words that felt too real. During one late-night shoot, the set was drenched in mist, the temperature biting cold. Yibo, shivering slightly, rubbed his hands together, trying to stay warm. Without a word, Xiao Zhan took off his own jacket and draped it over Yibo's shoulders. "Don't catch a cold," he said simply. Yibo looked at him, surprised for a second, before breaking into a small smile. That moment, brief, unscripted, was the beginning of an unspoken bond that would captivate millions of fans worldwide. Even after the Untamed wrapped, neither of them knew how drastically their lives were about to change. The show aired quietly at first, but soon the waves of fandom began to swell. Edits, fan art, discussions, all bursting with love for the duo's on-screen magic. Xiao Zhan and Wang Yibo became household names almost overnight. But before all that glory, there were still moments of uncertainty. Xiao Zhan would stay up late, sketching or singing softly to himself, wondering if the audience would truly connect with the story. Yibo, ever the perfectionist, rewatched his dance scenes, critiquing his every move. Neither could predict the cultural storm that the Untamed would unleash, nor how it would immortalize their names together. Before the fame there were rejections. There were times when Xiao Zhan didn't get the role he wanted, when casting directors told him he didn't fit the look. There were auditions where he stood among hundreds, waiting for a chance that didn't come. For Yibo, there were days of grueling training, of being told to be sharper, be faster, be more. But they both endured. They both believed. Once, in a rare interview before the Untamed, Xiao Zhan said quietly, "I'm not afraid of slow progress. I'm only afraid of standing still." Yibo echoed that sentiment in his own way. If you want to shine, you must be willing to burn first. Those weren't just words. They were reflections of who they had always been, long before fame magnified them. What many don't know is how their connection off-camera mirrored their on-screen dynamic. Xiao Zhan was thoughtful and gentle, often the one who'd listen more than speak. Yibo was straightforward, often teasing but caring in subtle ways. They balanced each other perfectly, like two halves of an unspoken understanding. Before the roaring crowds, flashing cameras, and glittering stages, there was silence. The kind of silence that echoes in small rooms where dreams are born. The world now knows Xiao Zhan and Wang Yibo as international icons, legends of modern entertainment, but before the fame, before the Untamed, before global fandom, they were simply two young men trying to find their place in a world that didn't yet see their light. That light began to flicker long before the world noticed it. In the early days, Xiao Zhan's life was painted in the soft hues of simplicity. His university dorm room was small but warm, filled with stacks of sketchbooks and pencils scattered across the desk. Every line he drew seemed to tell a story of yearning, of someone waiting for something bigger than himself. There were nights when he'd sit by the window, his reflection merging with the lights of Chongqing, humming quietly to himself. That voice, gentle but full of emotion, wasn't meant for the world yet. It was his secret, a melody that healed his own heart. One evening, while preparing a presentation for his design class, his roommate pushed open the door and said, "Zhan, there's a talent show audition in town. You should go." He laughed softly, looking up from his sketches. "A talent show? I'm not exactly idol material." "Maybe not yet," his friend grinned. "But you will be." Something about those words lingered. And so, almost on a whim, Xiao Zhan filled out the form and sent it in. That decision, made out of curiosity, would change everything. At the audition, he stood among hundreds of hopeful faces. The lights were harsh, the judges cold. When his turn came, He took a deep breath, adjusted the microphone, and began to sing. The room, which had been noisy and restless, grew still. His voice wasn't perfect, but it was pure. There was something heartbreakingly real about the way he sang, as if he was telling a story only he understood. One of the judges whispered, "There's something about him. He's not just performing, he's feeling." That night when he walked home, Xiao Zhan didn't know whether he'd passed or failed. But his heart was lighter. For the first time he'd done something not out of fear or duty, but out of love. Meanwhile, miles away, a restless spirit was taking shape in Luoyang. Wang Yibo was the kind of boy who lived in motion, skateboarding down empty streets, practicing dance moves until his sneakers tore. He wasn't just chasing rhythm. He was chasing freedom. At 13, he watched a dance crew perform on TV. The music pulsed, the moves sharp and explosive. His eyes widened. He felt something awaken inside. From that night onward, his room became his training ground. Every day after school, he'd push the furniture aside, turn up the volume, and move until sweat drenched his shirt and exhaustion blurred his thoughts. His parents worried. "Yibo, you should focus on your studies. Dancing won't feed you." He looked at them with quiet determination. "I don't want to be fed, I want to fly." At 14, he entered a national dance competition. Most participants were older, more experienced, but Yibo wasn't afraid. He took the stage with the confidence of someone who already knew who he was. The music dropped, and in an instant he became fire. His movements were fast, precise, almost electric. When it ended, the crowd erupted. He didn't win that competition, but he didn't need to. A representative from Yuehua Entertainment noticed him and offered him a trainee spot. Suddenly, his world changed. He left home, left everything familiar behind, and moved to Seoul to train. Those years were brutal. Long hours, strict rules, and endless practice. He was young, homesick, and surrounded by strangers. But Yibo never broke. He'd wake up before sunrise to stretch, stay up after midnight to perfect a single move. His dream burned too bright to be dimmed by fatigue. And on lonely nights, when the dorm lights were out and the city outside slept, he'd whisper to himself, "One day, they'll remember me." Fate has its own rhythm. In different corners of the world, two boys were fighting their own battles, unaware that their paths were destined to collide. Xiao Zhan was discovering his confidence through small performances and group rehearsals with X9. He wasn't the loudest or the most experienced, but his sincerity made people notice him. He would often stay behind after practice, rehearsing alone, refining every step until it felt effortless. Wang Yibo, meanwhile, was growing into his own as a dancer and performer with UNIQ. On stage he was a storm, wild and captivating. Off stage he was quiet, observant and focused. His drive was unmatched, but so was his loneliness. Then, in 2018, destiny brought them together for the Untamed. But before that iconic project even began, there was an unseen bond forming in silence. The bond of two souls who had walked the same path of hardship, determination, and unwavering faith. Picture Xiao Zhan alone in a rehearsal room, his voice echoing softly as he rehearses under a single fluorescent light. His reflection in the mirror looks tired but determined. Every time he misses a note, he doesn't stop. He tries again. Now picture Wang Yibo in a dimly lit dorm, his headphones on, practicing dance routines while his teammates sleep. He counts beats in his head, sweat dripping from his temples, eyes burning with focus. Neither knew it yet, but they were walking parallel lines that would one day meet in the brightest spotlight imaginable. Before the world adored them, there were moments that tested them. Xiao Zhan once considered quitting. "Maybe I'm not good enough," he confessed to a friend after a failed audition. "Maybe I should just go back to design." But then he remembered the thrill of that first performance, the feeling of being truly alive. That memory kept him going. Yibo, too, had moments of uncertainty. Once, during training, his instructor told him bluntly, "You're talented, but you lack control." "You'll never make it if you don't focus." Those words cut deep. But instead of quitting, he practiced harder. Every mistake became motivation. They were, even before the fame, the embodiment of persistence. Before the flashing cameras, before millions screamed their names, there were just two dreamers in dimly lit rooms, chasing something invisible. Their journeys weren't built overnight. They were carved from rejection, sleepless nights, and an unyielding belief that they could become more. When you look at Xiao Zhan smiling on stage today, or Yibo dominating the screen with his cool, effortless charisma, remember this: behind that calm lies fire. Behind that grace lies grit. Their success wasn't luck. It was legacy in the making. So the next time you see them shining under the spotlight, remember where it all began, before the fame, when they were just two boys daring to dream against the odds. Because their story isn't just about stardom, it's about becoming. Clap aboard if you loved this emotional journey into Xiao Zhan and Wang Yibo's beginnings. Don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe for more powerful storytelling about their untold moments. Your support helps keep their inspiring stories alive and spreading across the world.